Good evening, everybody. We are meeting this evening with Brainard Carey. And as I think many of you know, I have been doing this Klein-Artist-Works course for 4 years. And when I began doing this, Brainard had already been working as an artist mentor before me and has been doing a good job working with many artists. And, you know, Brainard and I communicate periodically, compare notes, and I think we have an interesting relationship. But also what's interesting is that I come at this from having been an art dealer. Brainard comes at this from having been and being an artist. So Brainard, good evening. Where were you born? Where were you raised?
Okay, I was born in Manhattan and I was raised in Yonkers, New York, just outside the city. So I went to public schools in that area and knew the city as a kind of a playing ground a little bit.
Fair enough. How did it happen that you got to be an artist? When did you, were you an artist as a young kid? I mean, like when you were a child, did you think you were going to be an artist, or did it come later?
No, it's an interesting question. I did some drawing for a while, and then I thought I actually wasn't any good at drawing. And then when I was in high school, I think, and began not so much making art, but I think understanding more about philosophy, ways of thinking, ways of understanding the world. I thought I want to be an artist somehow, but I don't have a medium. And I thought I want to find that medium. That's honestly how it came to me. It was a weird thought, but I thought I don't have a medium. And so, yeah, up and through college, I went to an art school and just experimented with all kinds of forms until I found what I thought was one of the mediums that I like: painting, printmaking, woodcuts, performance art it ended up being eventually, and then kind of conceptual art.
You had a gallery for a while, right?
Had a gallery after college. The quick trajectory is, I moved out to a place called Block Island, which is where I used to live in summer and have jobs, and opened up a gallery, published a magazine out there, really knowing nothing about any of that kind of thing. And then it was after a few years of that, coming back to the city and getting into the Whitney Biennial. But yeah, that was the trajectory, or, to
kind of scrambled.
Yeah, well, I mean, Block Island was a place where I didn't know what I was doing after school, and I wanted to have shows and do stuff. And so I decided, kind of naively and quickly, I'll open a gallery and rent a space, and we'll sell artwork, and everyone will have 1- and 2-person shows. And it was a way to stay active artistically, and
sure.
Didn't make much money. A magazine that I did out there ended up making some money. But
how old are you?
I'm 50.
And when did you start mentoring?
I think I was about 45.
Oh, so
no, not
like
45, not 45. No, longer than that. 35.
Okay.
More like 15, yeah.
So I guess that the sense is that you realized certain things about the art world that you wanted to share. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, it was the breaking point was when, I'd known it from a little bit of the gallery standpoint, the artist-run gallery. And I wanted very much to sell work, to exhibit more. And I went to New York and started asking museums and all kinds of people questions about, how do you get into these big shows? How do you get into these museums? And that, and nobody really told me much. It was kind of frustrating. I said, well, they didn't really know too, and they couldn't articulate it, I realize now. And so I was focused on getting into the Whitney Biennial. And when I did get in there by asking, writing, doing unorthodox things, people started asking me how I did that. How did that happen? And I wanted to tell them, because I don't have anything, I don't need to be, I'm not that kind of person that would not say anything, or like the people that I was running into that seemed to have no answers. So I shared it, and I think that was helpful to people. That's been kind of my personality, I think, how I encourage people sort of naturally. So I think it was an extension of that. But then I realized people needed more support. It wasn't just my story and how I got in. It was also, so they work in a different medium. They're a fabric artist or a painter or a photographer, and how do they present themselves so a gallery or the Whitney Biennial would be interested? So then I started this whole system where people pay something, so a certain amount of my time is demanded, I think is the short, explanation, so that I can plan a strategy and they can rely on it.
Do you feel like the art world is more convoluted than other fields?
Convoluted? I don't know. I'm pretty, Vito Acconci once said it's the only field that you can bring any other field into. Like, science is more or less science, I mean, depending on what area it is, or different ways of you know, getting involved in different schools of thought. But art is the one field you can bring anything into. You can bring in science, you can bring in math, you can bring in philosophy, you can bring in activism, I don't know, children's
Well, yeah, but what
learning.
that means then is that we can go in lots of different directions, but it doesn't clear the path that one would take. It says that there are many paths. I guess one of the things that you and I both point out is that there's lots of art villages and that people can pick and choose and that there are many there. But I guess the question I'm getting at is, maybe it's art schools. Should art schools be doing a better job of teaching people how to have a career? Would that impact you and me negatively? I mean, shouldn't they be doing that? Are they doing it?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, that's a taboo, I think. That's changing. You know, a lot of art schools don't want to touch ideas about professional development, career development. You know, you're not supposed to be selling any art, right? You know.
That's a little old school.
Yeah, well, there's more schools having and getting people like us involved in teaching classes. I'm sure you've given lectures, I've given lectures, but it's what students want. But, you know, it's also, I mean, I understand that they don't want it to be like mechanics and here's the career class, so get going. But still, people need to know how to navigate it. I don't think it's convoluted really, but I think that it's confusing because there's no information. And so you get out of college and you try to, I mean, I did a gallery. I didn't know what I was doing. I tried a lot of different things. But yeah, I think that's coming. I think that's what's happening now. There's a lot more people like what you and I are doing in different ways, teachers, basically.
Right.
And the universities are slow to adopt it, but they are. You know,
they're getting, I agree. It's about time, but they should have been ahead of us. I've learned a lot doing this for 4 or 5 years. You know, I've had ideas change and things that I've, you know, confronted with people. I'll lead you on a minute, but I want you to talk about things that have changed, you know, since you've been doing this. One of the things that's changed for me, for example, is that I used to feel that an artist had to make a singular body of work, and that a body of work had to resemble a book, and that the things that went into a series of pieces was like a series of chapters or a series of paragraphs. And I remember doing a webinar with Jason Middlebrook, who I've known forever, so he was free to rip me apart. Said, Paul, that's so last century. In the 21st century, it's important to be an interesting artist. And, you know, I've taken that to heart. And in my course, I give people permission to make greeting cards and deers and, you know, whatever else, you know, to go in multiple different directions, you know, highly abstract, whatever they're doing, whatever. I mean, all of us have multiple personalities. Or multiple facets to our personality. What kinds of things have you learned?
In the process of doing this, you mean more about the artists that work with me and what they struggle with, kind of thing, more often?
That's fine. Or how, yeah, let's go there.
I think in the time I've been doing this, what I've learned is that I work with people at all points in their careers. I've worked with students, with mid-career artists, with artists who have had major careers but now don't have a gallery. I've also worked with galleries. But to speak just to the artist spectrum, you know, it's not that all artists want the same thing. They want exhibits and more intention and more shows, but everybody's at a different point in their career. Everybody has different skill sets. Everybody's a different personality. So every path is a little bit different. But one of the common things is, for sure, is just level of confidence and how that's built and how that gets grown, you know. Some artists have tremendous ambitions and want something so badly, you know, all the stories you hear about, and other artists don't. So that's something that kind of has to be developed, and it's very psychological. It's one thing I've learned is a bigger key often than just here's the roadmap and, you know, I'll help you lay this out and stay with you every step of the way. There's also how far will you go, or how far do you want to go, kind of thing. Other things I've learned is amazing things can happen very quickly, you know, and the opposite. I've worked with artists who, you know, they want to have a show. They've never had a show till this one guy was last September, you know, and I'm encouraging him and telling him how to go out and see galleries and do things. But sometimes it happens this fast where he gets a gallery and he has a solo show and he does well, all within 6 months. And now he's in Miami, Basel with like $200,000 of his art that's trying to be sold. I mean, it happened very fast for him. And I guess what I've learned is it's a combination of things, you know. I guess it's obviously my helping to guide, but the artist brings different psychological things to the table is really what I'm trying to get at. And he was scared too, is what I was going to mention about him. I remember he said, I can't go to the galleries, Brainard. I'm just really scared to do that. I'm just going to call them all. And that's what he did. And still all these amazing things happen for him. So it's about getting around fears, I think, is what the thesis of my answer to you is. One thing I've learned.
How does one do that? How do you get around? I mean, you're addressing what I see as the biggest obstacle for artists who've completed my course. You know, I mean, you and I can teach them and illustrate how to get from where they are to where they like to be. But my sense is that a lot of people, artists included, put obstacles in front of themselves and then balk at those obstacles. And that's the challenge that I see people and artists continuing to have. Do you do anything about that?
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. And I think it doesn't matter where anybody is in their careers, you know. I mean, there's fear, but yes, how to get through that is just to cut to the quick. Yeah, it's just like coaching people out of writer's block or artist's block. Why do they have that? It's sort of this mysterious thing that seems impenetrable. And it's with a coach taking small steps. You have to write back to me. You have to call me, whatever it is, you're held to account. And by doing a repetitive task that's difficult at first, it gets better, and you naturally build confidence. Like, for example, going to see a gallery. You know, it's really scary or whatever for some people, what to say. The fact is that if you can get yourself to do it once, it'll be better than not doing it all. If you can do it twice or 3 times and you have someone expecting your call, you're going to feel a little better every time. And eventually, yeah, it's what?
Precisely.
So that's one way of just, you know, can I do anything about confidence? How does that work in the coaching context? That's how it works, one step at a time, so that it naturally builds. You start feeling better. I mean, it's a very visceral, emotional, psychological issue that isn't that has to come through, I think, behavioral things. Do this task, do this task, do this task, and you know, you can adjust them, but everybody, it's like a muscle. Maybe that's not a good analogy, but I think you can build it. You can build it.
Well, that's good enough. And I think, you know, I talk about baby steps a lot. I think, you know, that's it. Once, you know, I mean, you do the little baby steps. You walk to a gallery, you say, hello, nice show. You know, anybody can do that if they think it's a nice show. And from that, you know, you can grow along.
Yeah.
There are several people, there's a comment that's, you know, going along parallel to our discussion. And people are asking about the artist who you were referring to, who was 50 and had these sudden successes and is showing up at Miami Basel because they want to see what success looks like. Can you name the person?
Ask about him. Yeah, Craig Doherty. Craig Doherty, Dorety. Yeah, you'll see he's at Miami Basel. The gallery is Kimberly. They're from California, so it's in San Diego. One second. I hope I'm not knocking you guys off the line, but
no, it's fine.
Okay. Let's see if it would pop up. Well, maybe I can send it later. But Craig Doherty, Dorety. You can go to his website anyway, and there should be on there. Johansson Projects is his gallery. And you'll see that, and you can learn more about him. But the question is, what happened to him was, I mean, yeah, he does this light-based work, and for sure the work is cool. He's using programmed lights, and things slowly turn, pieces of plywood, and the effect of the light is kind of an optical illusion. It's interesting work, you know. But still, he's able to meet it and deal with it and not get scared off by the fact that he's succeeding. So, I don't know, is there any specific question about him?
No, I think people just wanted to know what success looked like.
Yeah, he says, you go to his website, craigdoherty.com, Dorety.com.
Yeah, somebody found it and posted a link. It's all good. Let's talk about you differently for a moment. How do you work with people? What, this is your advertisement, your pitch. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, I think just to give one example, because it was a notice that I just sent out today where I was promoting something, was group interaction, where you become part of a group. This is one way of working with people, the least expensive. It's $97. If you're interested, you could message me on Facebook, but you become part of a private Facebook group. And then together, I'm giving talks every week, and you can respond to those talks by writing in there. There's a community of artists, so you're sharing art and kind of supporting one another. And it's the least expensive way to get involved with me in a way that really encourages you sticking to deadlines, getting things done. I mean, again, since I am being a little commercial and pitchy here, so it's fine. That one's $97. And then if you were to work with me personally, where it's time out.
$97 for what period of time? How long is that? What is it?
That's per month, and you can stop it at any point. Basically, become part of this family of artists, and we're looking at each other's work, and you're hearing about other people doing well or not. So if it's somebody like Craig Doherty, although he's not in that group, but you could see that, and then that's exciting. You want to know, who is that? What did they do? How did that happen? To me, that builds confidence in a lot of ways. It's a powerful form.
One-on-one interaction with you during that?
No, that's all through texting, but you can personally text me, email, and it's being part of that group. Okay. Yeah, I do teleseminars that you can also interact with, similar to how you're commenting now. So yeah, that's the other way. And the other way is coaching with me, and you can, talk to me about that for free if you want. But that starts at $250 a month is essentially my coaching package.
And what do you get for that?
You get an hour for the first call, which is the whole orientation. And during that orientation of that hour, I ask you questions about what you're trying to achieve. And then we lay out a roadmap to get there. So at the end of your first hour, you're left with two things. A long-term goal that's written down, and I send you my notes, which is a short-term list of tasks you have to do that suit your lifestyle, where you're at, everything, your comfortability level. So you have this task from Brainard to do these 6 things. And then I call you again in 2 weeks, and every 2 weeks we talk for half an hour. That's really the only kind of personal coaching package I offer. That's $250 a month. You can email me as much as you want in between, and it creates a system of support so that you get to your goals. It's in my interest and yours. That can be for 2 months, 6 months, a year, 1 month, whatever you want. You're in control of that too. Those are the 2 ways I work. Sure, if anybody has any questions, you can ask now through Paul or whatever, but that's on Facebook.
Let's open this up. Who has questions? Anybody have questions? Let's ask some of these. See what you want to ask Brainard. So, you can compare, if you want, things that I've said to things that Brainard might say. Avon, take it away.
Okay. I've got a question, since both of you are mentors, how you would deal with this, or what your recommendations to an artist would be. For example, I tend to like my new works as an artist. I'm always exploring, and I like my new works, and I like them for a while, and then they hang on the wall, and within 2 weeks or a month, most of the work I seem to always not like as well. Is that something common among artists because we're always exploring, or how should we deal with that, I don't like that anymore aspect? Because if I don't like it, I'm less likely to exhibit it.
Good one. Brainard.
Yeah, I think that is common for sure. Everybody wants to show their latest body of work. I often hear, I don't want to show this yet because I'm still working on it, and the other stuff is old. I don't like it as much anymore. I think that's natural. All work is an evolution. Most artists see it as cumulative. The process is cumulative, so your recent work would be your best work. I think in terms of how to deal with it, because sometimes older bodies of work are very beautiful and very saleable and something that the market should be able to enjoy. That's part of, I think, asking other friends what they think, because often there are older bodies of work that even though you're not interested, you may see faults in, other people may like. And I think it's ideal to find a way to kind of get outside yourself a little bit and be able to look at a body of work and say, this is good, even though it's old and I don't relate to it anymore, because there's value in that. So, other people, asking other people, I think is a way to deal with that. But it's okay to favor your current body of work as well. But yeah, the older work can be important to share.
I notice more and more that shows are happening where there's a body of work from 1970 or 1980 by a fairly significant artist that is being presented right now. So you're looking at a show of art that's 20, 30, 40 years of age that obviously didn't sell the first time, and now it's really interesting. What's your opinion about how much old work one should hold on to?
How much old work one should hold? Well, it depends. If it's work on paper, I suppose you could hold on to a lot of it.
I'm thinking more about the emotional issue and whether it becomes baggage.
Well, I think it becomes baggage when you run out of storage space, you know. It's really an issue of storage, right? In New York, it's tough. Storage space costs money. People have storage outside the city, but even if you have storage, what do you do with it? It's yeah, that's a profound question. I don't know, what is the question, because it is troubling. You have all this work, and I sometimes talk to artists that are dealing with estates of parents too that have left behind hundreds or thousands of works of art, and what do you do with it, right? Is that the question, kind of thing?
Well, that could be. That wasn't, but go ahead. You know, the question was, as a good artist, let's say you've produced 300 works of art and you've sold 10. And, you know, you're certain you're going to make it one day, and you've got 290 works of art in your ever-shrinking studio. What do you do?
Well, you hold on to it. I mean, one thing that's great is, and I think they're building one in Chicago, but here's an answer to it that was great. Do you know about Mana Contemporary?
Yes. Mana,
Okay, so if you guys don't know about it, it's a kind of brilliant new art world model, I think. But these guys who owned a moving company in New York, Moishe's Moving Company, decided they were going to build a place where artists could store their art. And then one of the guys said, well, they don't want to store their art there. They also want to show their art. And so they built this huge facility that's like basically a storage house. I'm pretty sure they're building one in Chicago.
No, they have. It's here.
Oh, they have. It's here. So,
yes.
So I mean, you can give me your feedback about this, but essentially it's a place to store your work and have a studio. There's collectors coming through there. It's, you know, it's a brilliant model. They have gallery exhibits in there, and it allows you to solve those equations, which is you can keep all your work, store it, because museums are buying storage space now, and they have the benefit of they can exhibit some of their permanent collection in there. I mean, how brilliant is that for a storage idea? You know, so
I also think they've done a good job of, I think, seems like they've given away studios to some significant artists, so that it's not all lower end kinds of folks, but there's there's a bit of a draw or a target appeal.
Oh, there is. Well, they bring in a lot of, I mean, you're having museums, major museums in New York. They were the Met, MoMA, that have their work stored there. If the Met and the MoMA, major museums, are showing in this storage space museum kind of thing, your work looks great in there. They bring in all kinds of high-end collectors. I think it's one kind of brilliant idea. It's a good model too. If anybody wants to start a storage unit, that's a wonderful art world model that makes money, that makes everybody happy. Artists get storage, studio space, a good context with collectors and wealthy patrons. I mean, and the people make money. Unlike alternative spaces, they're making money from storage. It doesn't cease to amaze me what a brilliant idea that is, because they're also outside of the art world. These are two moving guys. I mean, not to belittle their huge ambitions, but we're not talking art world elite kind of setup, and they're having a huge impact.
No, that's really clear. Does anybody else have questions? I'm surprised. More questions, please. You know, there was an article about Moishe and those guys in the New York Times, and there was some innuendo there that I'm not clear on.
Oh, the innuendo was these guys aren't really cool. They're not the art world. They have nothing to do with the art world as the elite galleries know it, which is what we saw up in here in the press, you know, about the kind of 1% of artists, how this guy's made so much money, which is also, I think, kind of an important issue, because the mass of artists aren't that. When people talk about the art world, you know, they often seem to be talking about these incredibly wealthy artists that are only selling in one part of Miami this week, which is inside the actual Basel Fair. That's basically, you know, over as soon as it starts after the first day. I mean, the rest is all other stuff. But
true.
So it was, yeah.
June, go ahead. Wait a minute, I'm trying to unmute you unsuccessfully. What?
Am I still a professional artist? We'll
get to that one. Hold on.
All right.
Let's go to. I can't do June. Go ahead and answer Sam's question.
Hello?
Hi.
Brainard, answer Sam's question. Are you still a professional artist?
Oh, am I still a professional artist? Yes, I am. My wife and I work together as a collaborative. I do a number of things. I do this mentoring, but I also have a radio station at Yale where I interview a lot of people, and I write books. So I've written a couple self-help books, 3 books on how artists to build their careers. But in the world of fine art, or when we got into the Whitney Biennial and all the shows since then, what I do is I started out after the little bit that I talked about, printmaking and performance, I opened a storefront in New York. It was $750 a month. I could live in there too. This was only 1995, not that long ago. I started giving out hugs, foot washings, and bandages to the public with my wife. And it was an extension of some other things, but that's what eventually got into the Whitney. So it's a performance. It's obviously artistic license that can allow you to do something like that in one sense. But it's also sort of playful and intimate, right? The latest project we've done a lot of interactive installations. We're the kind of artists that people wonder, how did that get into a museum? Right? It's like they're giving out hugs, it's art, they're in the Whitney, you know. I mean, I know that, you know, that's what my mother said, you know, and she's into it. But that's a good question, and it's how you present yourself. So I learned a lot about presenting myself then, which is why I got so many answers. And now we're doing something called the Museum of Non-Visible Art. That started 2 years ago with a Kickstarter project, and it was about creating works of art by essentially writing them, imagining them, describing them. But then we did a Kickstarter project where we actually sold some of those little pieces of writing as artworks.
I've got one here.
He's got one there.
Yeah, I'm not sure where, but I got
that
one.
was hugely successful. We got the actor James Franco to be in our video, and we didn't know him. That's a story if you want to know how I contacted him. But it was very successful. We raised thousands of dollars, and that's still what we do. And that's, in a way, the most controversial project we've ever done. I see it as really avant-garde because it irritates a lot of people, and at the same time, it's very successful. But it's sincere. It's about being playful. It's about your imagination. We do workshops with children. They make non-visible artworks. And we like to build a physical institution. There's a lot more I could say about that, but that's what I'm doing now as a professional artist. How do I make money? Supported by patrons that give me money directly for projects, like the old school model, which some artists I work with do. I think it's fine. Some do it enormously successfully, where you ask people who have a lot of money for money to support what you're doing. You entertain them with your interesting idea, sculpture, painting, whatever it is. Age-old kind of thing, not impossible to do at all. Someone who was actually in the group, a woman who is new to this group that I was talking about before, this private Facebook group where you could message me about. I was giving a talk about raising money, asking people for money. She raised $10,000 in less than a month from one person, and someone that you sent me to, Paul. Girl out in where was she? Montana or something. Got $10,000 like that.
Yep.
You know, had trouble raising the next 10,000. You know, I mean, that was interesting. But that also happens. Getting that kind of success fast is sort of scary. But anyway, that's part of what I do, and that's how I support myself as a professional artist. You know, as well as writing and.
Cool. June, go ahead.
Hi, Brainard. It's amazing to talk with you. I read your book and the Blue Book, and I really liked it. And so you work one-on-one with artists, and you said that you give them a list of to-do tasks. What's a typical list, if there is one?
Well, that's a good question. There isn't really a typical list, but I could give you one. But the reason there isn't a typical list is because it depends where you live, what you want, what your job hours are, what your daily schedule is like. You know, some people only have certain times.
Say you were an artist that works full-time as a teacher, and you lived in Los Angeles, and you wouldn't mind getting gallery representation or museum or stuff like that. Okay, so
probably on the to-do list, and this is kind of just shooting from the hip, but it would probably be something like there would be certain target galleries that would be your goal. I'd like to show in one of these 6 galleries. I went in there once. And then the next task would probably be, which could all be in the first list, depending on where you were at, because I also don't want to, I get to know you a little bit in that first hour, so I don't want to push you too much or too little. I don't want you to be uncomfortable, but I don't want you to feel like, you know, this is too easy to do. So then let's say the task would be that this Saturday you visit all those galleries, and you don't ask them anything, you just check them all out, and you think, are these what I thought? Do these really look like nice places? And maybe then the next weekend, or maybe that Sunday, you you go again. And if you're feeling good, you say to each one of them, do you look at the work of new artists? This would be written out on your to-do list, exactly what to say. I mean, just one option. And they're either going to say, yes, we do, or no, we don't. And if they say, no, we don't, okay, nice to meet you. You know, it's nothing personal. If they say, yes, we do look at new art, to the question, which is the golden question, do you look at the work of new artists? If they say yes, then it's, I'm an artist, how do I send you work? And usually in New York now, the thing is, this happens everywhere though, is usually send me a few JPEGs and an email. That's how everybody actually looks at art, right? I mean, your website is kind of confusing usually, even if it's amazing, right? It's this and that. And so, you know, that's usually what happens. So let's say that was on your to-do list. And then it would be following up with those galleries. You'd be emailing me saying, Brainard, I went to this one, they said this one said this, and then we'd craft a letter back to them and by email until we talked again. That could be on your to-do list. There could be other things on your to-do list. Maybe you have a bigger dream that you haven't told me about and that you'd actually like to open your own school. If you had an idea like that or some kind of institution building thing that you didn't think we'd really discuss, I'm interested in pursuing that as well, like very big dreams, because they're actually easier to make happen than I need just one local gallery to send me a check regularly, you know. Very large scale dreams are often easier to do. So if there's something like that, then there would be maybe just some research tasks that you have to do to kind of nurture that dream.
Thank you. And it would be great to hear your James Franco story.
Okay, the James Franco story. All right, to be brief, and this is a good story because it's how do you reach someone like that? I knew when I was doing the Kickstarter project that the ones that do really well have like celebrities or amazing, you know, rewards on them, right? And how do you get one of these celebrities and who would be cool? And I forgot how James Franco came up, but I thought, yeah, he would be into art, and the Museum of Non-Visible Art is kind of something that seems like a stretch. And we thought he might be into it. So what we did was, and this is just how to get to anybody sort of response, but one of the things is it okay if I answer this, Paul?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
So, so then what I would say to, and did say to, like to myself and my wife, is how do we get his email address? Well, at that time he was registered at Yale, right? He was going to school there. So everybody at Yale has the same email address. And you can find it in this, every institution in the world does, in fact. This is the key to reaching anybody. So if James Franco's at Yale and Yale's email is first name dot last name at Yale edu, that's his email address, or last name dot first name, whatever it is. Easy enough to find out by just writing to somebody on the Yale website. You'll get an email back that gives you their protocol. That's actually how you can get to any museum, any curator, any museum. MoMA is what first initial, or Guggenheim is first initial last name at Guggenheim. So if you know
all museums are like that. Just
right, they're all like that. So, so anyway, so wrote to James Franco, said something really brief. I mean, this took some pursuit, is the truth. You know, I wrote him a quick little email, said, we're doing this cool project about non-visible work, and I know you worked with Marina, and, you know, thought this would be a cool, Marina Abramovic, you might like this. And amazingly, he writes back a very short text a day later that says, sounds cool. What did he say? Sounds cool, period. Talk to my assistant or something. Right, like really, like not even a complete sentence. And then we were like, well, you know, who's your assistant? Wasn't even CC'd to anybody. And then eventually he was like, you know, oh, so-and-so, you know, because I kept saying we have to arrange a meeting. And then his assistant was sort of right. Oh, is this a good meeting place? This coffee shop, that coffee shop. And then she would say, no, that's not a good date. That's not a good date. That's not a good date. So we were going back and forth with dozens and dozens of emails. It's not a good date. It's not a good date. And then after maybe literally a month of emails, and this is a big thing for artists, like following up with emails, it's crazy. But this seems to be the state of the world. So I'm following up with his assistant, which is really just his art assistant kind of person. And eventually, like, we can never settle on a date. And so then someone writes from, obviously, Hollywood, and they're like, you know, I'm James Franco's, you know, scheduler, you know, where's the time? Where's the place? And I said, okay, this cafe, this time. Okay, he'll be free then, you know, he'll meet you there. Maybe there was one call back that they gave me to confirm it. And then, so let's say it was on a Tuesday. the Monday before that, I get an email from them, like the day before. And the guy says, listen, his schedule says, listen, James Franco says, sorry. He wants to wish you the best of luck with your project, but he can't do it this time. He's too busy. Right? And so we're like, holy cow, right? This is after like 2 months scheduling a thing. And like, so then I thought we have nothing to lose. So I emailed him one more time. I said, James, you know, I understand you don't want to do it. And I get that. But if, you know, we think you're one of the few people who could do this. You have a good mind for this. You've done this kind of project where you wrapped your mind around something that takes a lot of understanding of art and culture. I mean, basically, I'm complimenting him, but being sincere. I said, so if you don't want to do it, I get it. But if you do, really love to have you. I'm just going to ask you this last time. So then like 3 hours later, the scheduler calls again. Okay, James is going to meet you tomorrow morning. I mean, that's the story, right? It's persistent. So then, and this is often what I end up doing with artists, which seems like nothing, but it's like, how do you pursue somebody without thinking you're not crazy? And what do you say? So then I met him and with my wife and asked him if he would make a video about a non-visible creation of his, and he got it, and he made it. So that's how, and that was huge. It immediately gave us like 40 articles in major magazines all over the world. You know, James Franco's Non-Visible Museum. You know, which also happens is the problem with partnering with someone that big. The project inevitably becomes theirs, which is okay. I got that. But, you know, it's like James Franco's museum is, you know, not to be seen or something. So, yeah, that's the James Franco story. Any questions about that? Or that's how you can meet anybody, and it would help with, and there's lots of ways to meet powerful people, but that's one.
It's all doable. Ruth, go ahead.
Hi, my camera is not working. Sorry. Hi, Brainard. Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
I'm just curious, like, what type of artists are you consulting with? I see, you know, the thing that I've noticed, I've been in New York, and there's just so much like mixed media, video, like installation, and I'm a painter, and sometimes I just wonder, like, is that enough, or do I need to be doing all that, you know, all those types of things? I think my painting is great, but like, is there a place for just a painter? Is sort of my question.
Absolutely. I think what I think is great about the art world now, and you know, if I don't answer this articulately enough, just ask me again. But I think, yeah, maybe there's a good amount of conceptual art out there, but really the market is vast now. We hear about the 1%, the 99% of artists are working in every conceivable medium. There are collectors everywhere buying everything from having, you know, totally naive taste to all different levels of sophistication and how they're looking at art and why, and they're buying it off the street, they're buying it in stores. It's just, it's huge. So even in the art world, the real art market, whatever that means, it's all over the board. I don't think there's anything an artist can't do. You could be a landscape painter only of, you know, romantic sunsets, and it would be contemporary. It's what you're doing now. You'd have a different perspective on it than other people. So, I mean, you also asked, what are the mediums I work with in the clients that I have, and I'll tell you, but I also just want to frame it by saying, I think it's just wide. You can be, you know, naive painter to anywhere in between the spectrum of any content at all, and I think there's a market for it now. There's nothing that there's the trendy market, but that's so narrow. It's so extraordinarily narrow, that trend of whatever it is, video or installation, that it's not worth trying to even capitalize on that. Just do your own thing, and there's many niches out there. Okay. The type of work that people are using, the type of mediums, definitely not largely conceptual or trendy kind of work. I work with people from Europe, all over the world, all over the country, and depending on where you are and what you're doing, most people aren't doing anything like that. They're painting, or they're doing sculpture or drawing, something like that, something that would seem very traditional by New York trendy standards. But there's markets for all of it. Not everybody wants New York art, for sure.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
You know, another thing, Ruth, is that you make really nice paintings. You know, I mean, some paintings are mundane. Yours are really solid. You should push those. You're doing good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Deborah, your turn. Go ahead. Deborah, you there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
One of the things I wanted to ask, I often feel my work's not distinctive enough. And do either of you guys have any, I don't know, hints on how to try and make your work more distinctive?
I do. Brainard, go ahead.
I'd like to hear you first, Paul, but I'll go.
I'll go. I don't care. I think what you need to do is to be yourself. I think you need to be vulnerable. I think you need to find the things inside of you that differentiate you from other people. To find the things that you have that are distinctive, and then put those into your work. I think the more vulnerable you are, the more you can show what makes you tick, the more you enable other people to see it, the more they can see what makes you tick, and all of a sudden it becomes a mirror to them so that they identify with the work. They see your vulnerability, but they see themselves. So I think that what you need to do is to, one, be willing to be vulnerable. I think it's a good strategy, because I don't think you're really as vulnerable, or you don't come off as vulnerable as the people perceive it. It becomes something that is a catalyst for them. So it's a little bit safer than it might seem. And by being willing to be yourself, be distinctive, be vulnerable, people can distinguish your work from everybody else's, and then they can start to identify it and spend money on it.
Very well put, Paul. I like that.
Thank you. I woke up for that one.
So I think, of course, I agree with Paul. And a lot of the artists that I've interviewed, very well-known artists, and maybe you hear that as well, Paul, people often talk about the importance of taking risk. So I think taking risks and you know, to echo really what Paul said, that is the way to make your work distinctive. You know, I don't know, paint with your left hand, or do something that's a little bit odd that makes you think you're going to mess it all up, or who knows. And it's those kind of things that make work distinctive. Mistakes, chances. Otherwise, just doing what you're doing, your work probably is totally distinctive, and you just may not realize it. Oftentimes, artists do all this work, and they think they don't have a signature, it's not distinctive. But clearly, if you look at 40 pieces, you would see a signature throughout it, or something distinctive. It's hard to avoid it, I think.
Totally true. Marita, you have a good question. Let me find you on the list. Hold on. Go ahead, Marita. Ask your question.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. So it takes me a couple, like a year to. I get about 2 pieces done per year, because it takes me a long time to develop a piece. There's a lot of components to it. So my question is, how long do I need to wait, essentially, before I can look for gallery representation? Like how big a body of work do I need to have?
Well, you may not need any. I mean, there could be just the work itself and all the preparatory drawings or maquettes or writing or whatever you do to build it up. That could be all the sellable work. But also, you could use the model of Christo, which is you raise money for your work. It's all paid for in advance. Patrons support your work. You have a gallery show, but you're probably not going to sell a lot at the gallery show. You'll sell some of the ephemera, but not the installation. But you have patrons that support you, which is similar to how I work. That is how I work. So in that case, you wouldn't have to wait at all. You could pursue that. You could pursue that now.
You know, while I agree with Brainard says, I mean, a gallery wants to have some input into your work. That doesn't mean you need to listen to it, but they want to feel like they have an input. And if you bring them a whole body of work that's all done, there's no room for input. If you're bringing them 1, 2, 3 pieces, you know, then that would give them the opportunity to participate. So, you know, I agree with that. All right. Anybody else have a question? Deborah, go ahead.
Oh, I asked mine.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, you did. Ruth, do you have a question, I think, or do you have another question? Your hand's up. I didn't lower it. Maybe that's it. Ruth, hold on. You're down. Okay, Brainard, I don't see any more questions. Anybody have questions? We got 10 minutes. Do you have a sense, Brainard, when you're working with artists, you know, immediately that some of them are going to be readily successful and some of them aren't sometimes?
Yeah, but I'm not always correct that way. Everybody starts out with a bang, you know, everybody starts out like, this is awesome, I'm inspired, it's, you know, I feel really good about this. And sometimes that lasts in some people more than others. And I usually do have a good instinct about it and can often see, yeah, something's going to happen right away, but they can feel it too in the first session. It wouldn't be just my instinct there. And then some people run into roadblocks quickly that tend to be, again, psychological ones more than, so it's like, how do we manage? Like, getting successful faster, because everyone thinks I'd love to sell paintings for millions of dollars, but that's why artists go crazy or become drug addicts or whatever it is. The psychological pressure is hard. If you don't feel worth it, and you're selling work for a lot of money, it gets very complicated. So I don't know. I don't know if that's helpful or that makes sense, but I'm trying to say that,
That's all right. I appreciate it. Patsy's got a good question. Patsy, go ahead.
Yes, I have to find it again. I'm doing a pop-up show. Hi. Thanks for coming today. I'm doing a pop-up show for just 2 days next week, and I want to know how I can use that to launch myself into further opportunities. How should I use it?
Oh, that's great. A pop-up show is great. So she's having a show where she's renting a space. I guess everyone understands what that is, and mounting a show yourself. The key is who you get there, who you invite to be there. Would be, if I was mentoring you, we would work just on who are the ideal people to come to this event, and it's only 3 days or 5 days, so we have 5 days.
It's 2 days only.
2 days, so we were working with
very short time within those 2 days. It's very
right.
small.
So what I would say is you target like a dozen or less people that are important that you really want to be there. Then you work hard getting them there by just calling them, writing to them, saying how important this is to you and how wonderful they are. Excuse me, and you'll get some there, and that's what is the most important thing.
Okay, someone suggested I leave it only 1 hour per day, but because they said that was what I was advised, and that seems a bit absurd. But
it's only sitting there 1 hour a day?
Well, no, but I'm in a laboratory, and that there's only space for 1 hour open, but I can probably smooth it, space it out, but 2 hours is sufficient.
Well, even if it is, as much time as you can get, but that's when there can essentially be private, kind of sober parties. You could invite
I'm not allowed to have any food or drink either.
Yeah, so no food or drink, just a private viewing party. You could do that. Make it like someone's very sober event. You could even do it at like lunchtime. I don't know when you're getting the hours, but somewhere where just this select group of people gets invited in, and you do your darndest to get them there. Call, write, beseech them, compliment them, send them cupcake or something. But something like that, I think. That's what I would focus on, getting the right people there. That's how you could take advantage. Because depending on what you're doing, you're probably not going to make sales. You want relationships.
No, I'm not selling.
Right. So you want relationships. Yeah, I would focus on that.
But you also want to think about what you can do to parlay this experience into another experience.
Exactly.
And you need to keep asking yourself that question. What is it about this body of work that can lead to another body of work? Is there another opportunity that I would like to get that I can use this as a stepping stone towards that opportunity? How would I create that? What would I do? So, it's like Brainard getting this harebrained idea of getting in touch with James Franco and pulling it off. I mean, that's somewhere approaching ludicrous. And he did it. That's the notion of a big idea. And a big idea, if you only get halfway there, you've still gone really far. So I think, that what you want to do with this pop-up show is have some other big ideas of like what you would like to accomplish, and then try and imagine a line from where you are to where that is and start growing it and allow for it to totally change.
Now, Paul, will you come, please?
Will I come? Of
yes,
course.
would you please?
Where is this?
Oh, at college at DePage in Glen Ellen.
Send me a note. I might. I heard about it. I might.
Keep pursuing Paul. Call him, because Paul, just like me, if I was there, you feel on the spot, and you feel like, wow, she's asking me right here. It's hard to say no. That's human nature. So keep asking him, and I'm sure he will be there.
Well, I want him to go to my other show too, but that's in Chicago. But I just
I gotta feel better before I get out of the house. But I'll make an effort. I want to go to Sam's question, and I think that's an interesting one. Sam, thank you too. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I think you guys are touching on it already, but I guess I swing from having ambitious goals to, I'm a doer. I get them done and I achieve. But to keep furthering those ambitions, somehow I think that idea of being ludicrous, as Paul says, can somehow block me and make me feel incredibly doubtful and So I'm wondering what strategies you have, like, and I'm sort of wondering in myself, like, when am I ever going to be satisfied? You know, like, so it's sort of a, you're not, yeah. I know it's hard. It's like, it's this balance between being realistic and ambitious, and also being positive. And well, yeah, why wouldn't you be able to exhibit at Mass MoCA, for example, or do a window display with Bergdorf Goodman, you know, because that's one of my dreams. But part of me feels like I've tried to go down this path of on one of those goals, and it's like, it's a lot of work, and so when does the persistence meet so much negativity that it's just, okay, maybe it's a sign from the universe saying it's not going to work, you know?
Well, I think it's, I don't think there's ever really a sign that it's not going to work. I mean, I suppose you could change direction, but
yeah, change directions is
you know, I think picking on a dream like want to do a window display in Bergdorf Goodman's, and how long do you pursue? I mean, just to be really concrete, how long do you pursue that? You're trying to propose to Bergdorf Goodman's, you're trying to get in there every angle, you want to do a window display, but it doesn't seem to be breaking for you.
Right.
It turned you down several times already,
Right.
And you've been in New York, 2 years now, and usually it doesn't work quite like that. Usually what happens is, so you're pursuing Bergdorf Goodman's, you're trying really hard.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's a little soul-crushing, the whole process.
Right.
It may actually happen at some point, and very often they do, just like my thing with James Franco. It happened. It could have ended just the day before, too, and I could be telling another story. But usually what happens is there are collateral things that happen. So even when I'm doing strategies with artists that I have a good intuition about them working, you're pursuing Bergdorf, we have this great proposal you've done, and that suddenly something else happens in the middle of it, where while you're pursuing this and meeting all these people, you get commissioned to do one for Woolworths, and you think, well, I don't want to do Woolworths, exactly. Or something. But suddenly that turns into a major corporate commission. I mean, that's how sometimes things happen. So the persistence, yeah, you have to do it endlessly till it's almost insane.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you had a few questions there, really.
Yeah, I did.
But, that's okay. But I think, in that regard, how do you, then there's the question at the beginning that I thought you were saying about just really ambitious goals, when do you stop doing them? There's always different tactics. I worked with one artist. This was kind of a really wonderful case. I only worked with him for a few months, where he said, I don't know, I want to be in regional shows. I'm a sculptor, but, that's kind of a pain. You don't sell anything at those shows. I'd like to maybe show locally, but, I'm kind of an untrained, nobody knows me here. He does sculpture, very small little marble sculptures. He said, I also like to do big sculptures, put them in parks and have stuff like that, but I have no background at all, really. That's no show history.
Yeah.
What should I do? We should just work on, applying for, shows and little steps towards getting that. And I said, no, why don't we go for the big thing? You want to, because he said, I don't have a studio to work in. I need more money to have a studio too. And I can't make the big marble sculpture I want. So I said, well, how about you make that big marble sculpture? You pick the park you want to put it in. And we talked a little bit about these parks in Seattle. And there was one not far from him that was kind of a junkie park, for lack of a better word. It was overrun. It was a mess. It was in town, but it was sort of it was abandoned kind of. People walked through it, but a lot of junkies there. So he said, I'd like to do one there, would be cool. So then we went on that crazy dream, right? Ambitious thing, and he has no funds. So he found out how to make something like that, because it really has to be done in another studio where they have all that marble and you can direct people and pay for, making something like that in some other studio, big studio, because he couldn't afford that.
Right.
So basically he had the thing sketched out before he made it, a little plaster model of this really cool looking sort of block thing. And then the next step was, let's get permission from the city to put it in there.
Right.
You wouldn't be surprised how that's not so difficult. It's not the money yet, but the city eventually saying, going to the city council, this guy who's an artist and feels like I can't get anywhere. You're dealing with a city council,
Yeah.
And it's a process, and they'll probably be like, oh yeah, it's a temporary sculpture, do it. And that's just what they said to him. I mean, that's why we said make it temporary. Permanent would be a different problem, but temporary could go on forever too. So he got permission. Then it was raising a little money, and it wasn't hard at all. Before some people thought, yeah, I would love to help produce a giant sculpture in a park that would brighten the whole city and make everybody happy. So kind of rags to riches thing that could happen quickly. If you find the right little project you could have passion over, usually, especially on higher levels like that, it's not that hard to get it through.
Yeah.
Christo's an example. Look at his persistence example. He tried to get the gates up in New York in like the 70s. He didn't get that through till the 90s. I mean, he literally spent 24 years, and they eventually told him no. You know, that's why he said it was 24 years. I think after 5 years of pursuing city council. I mean, it is New York City, and he's putting tons of stuff everywhere. Right?
Yeah, but he also had a lot of support. It seems like he always he was working with so many different institutions, or his work was essentially collaborative. You know,
he never worked with any galleries. He never worked with a gallery. He would only sell work directly out of his studio. I interviewed him a few times, but only out of his studio. Christo has a really weird model. He made millions of dollars inviting collectors over, selling it only from his studio, never through a gallery. He would not work with a gallery unless they bought it at full price from him and they could sell it on the secondary market. But that's from when he was young.
Yeah.
You know, again, that old model of just, you know, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I mean, go on. But the old model of raising money for projects, you know.
Yeah, I'm into having tea with some people, you know, every week.
That's good. I like that.
Invite people over for a cup of tea and we can talk about art or look at my work kind of thing.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, if it's patrons, it's specifically getting them involved and giving you money. I mean, that's
well, that I'm not.
Right. That may not be your path. I mean,
Right.
Brandon, we're running out of time, and we have a number more questions. Let's see if we can get through these maybe quickly, and otherwise we won't get through them all. David, go ahead. Hold on. All right, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, Brainard, thank you.
Sure.
The question I had was, actually I have two questions. One is that you said that large-scale dreams are easier, and I was wondering if you would expand on that. And the second was, you said you worked with your wife, and I was curious what that relationship was and what it was like.
Okay, to take the large-scale dreams first, when it's something like building an institution, or like that guy having a major sculpture and marble sculpture in a park, there was less competition. He wasn't applying for a grant or applying for local shows that 50 other artists were applying for. It was just him and City Hall. An artist wants to do something here. Yes or no, everybody. I mean, it's in a way you can reach these people much quicker. So, in a nutshell, that was kind of a good example. And other projects that I've worked on with people where let's say they have to ask a patron for $10,000. That seems, for some project, and work with an institution even to get nonprofit status. To be brief, usually the chances of that happening are great. You ask 10 people, one of them is going to say yes, and that's really ambitious, and that's really good odds. But it takes a good amount to do it. My wife and I was married once before, right? When I had that gallery, and went out with this woman for several years, then married her. Then we got divorced. We did everything together too, art and everything. And when I met my wife and we fell in love and I was doing the Hugs in the City thing, and she was great. I think I wanted to do something together, I mean, she did too. That was kind of where we're at in terms of being in love or whatever, but also it's about ego too. The whole classic thing of artist couples working together is it can get territorial and weird and jealous, career jealousy. What happens when one person's, and I've seen this, I've talked to a lot of really well-known artists whose spouses, husbands or wives, are artists that no one's ever heard of, right? And that's never had an exhibit. And they like Jenny Holster's husband or Jessica Stockholder's husband. She's the head of...
I know Patrick really well. It must be really challenging.
You know Patrick well. Okay. So he's a very good friend of mine who's here. So Patrick, he's an artist. You should go see his art sometime. He's in a different world than Jennifer. It's not easy. So my wife and I working together, I think to work under one name, sort of like the Lennon-McCartney thing, I think it's a little bit ego slaying, and just for me personally, and it allows us to get along, stay in love. I think, artist couples are tough.
Great. Thank you.
All right. I think we have time for only one more. I'm going to go to Sarah Louise. Sarah Louise, you get the last question. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Paul. I'm very honoured. I'm having an exhibition in January, which has happened by accident. I was actually asked to do it by the sort of relational things that you've talked about with us, Paul. And because it's a gift, I've decided that I want to support it in the best way that I can. So I'm actually using some technology that I'm going to pay for to actually put it outside the gallery as well as being inside the gallery. And I'm wondering if it's worthwhile hiring somebody like a PR person to increase presence and market it.
I think it's a beautiful idea what you're doing. Brainard, go ahead.
You mean to hire someone to market it or to create press for your show?
Yeah. Because it's a gift and it's not a expertise I have, is it worth, and I'm happy to back it. I'm in a very lucky position where I can back myself within reason.
Well, I think it is good to hire someone for publicity. Certainly everybody does in museums. Everyone hires someone to do press. The question is, I think, and I don't do that. I don't know if Paul does that, but it's finding someone who's the right person to do that, who can. And so one way to do that is instead of going with someone on the internet who's not that money or a social media, intern, look at who the local museum is hiring to do their press. That's the person who knows everyone. That's the agency that costs the most. But what can you buy from them? Because if it's someone just posting on Facebook and this and that, creating an event for you, it can end up being, they've done a lot of work, but it can end up for nothing. Whereas someone who's helping you craft a nice press release and talking to editors, that's probably what you want. So local, big nonprofits that are near your show, museums, theaters even, look on their emails and see if you can find out who's in their contact information. It'll sometimes send you to their media agency if they're big enough. Find out who it is and then try to hire them. They'll talk to you because you'll say, tell me what it is. If it's 100,000, I'm interested. They don't know whether you have money or not, right? They don't. So, and
the other thing, Sarah, is that you have a rather unusual and generous idea that you are creating. And a PR person might appreciate the generosity of that and do it at a reduced rate because you're being philanthropic and maybe they want to tag on with it. Allow for that. Very good, very good point. You're an artist. You explain that to them because media agencies do exactly that. They take on, like the zoo. I know in New York, all the ads for the zoo, which are great, are pro bono from some agency because it's the zoo. They don't have tons of money. And the zoo has a bad name these days. So, media agencies will often do that. Really good point, Paul. You're an artist. You're doing something for the world. It's not about selling your hairbrush or something,
Yeah, nothing's for sale, and it's actually for the public to come and make art. So it's actually like a public art piece. Collaborative, but with the general public, not just with me.
That sounds great. I mean, you could even get sponsors to do that. If you called paint companies and told them you were doing that, and, what I would say if I was consulting in strategy for you on this is find companies that would sponsor it and have a photographer there photographing maybe people making work if that's appropriate and hashtagging it, creativity reigns or something.
That's the technology I'm going to be using.
Right. So if you use that, you can sell those hashtags to organizations. Like this one woman I worked with, she was painting coffee cups, and she got at a coffee shop, painting on coffee cups. She got a sponsor to pay her to give away some of the pens that she was using, but like a lot of money, $10,000 over 5 days' work. So. That's because you're getting their name out there in a sincere way. You're doing something good, and golden paint or Faber-Castell can be associated with this. They'll pay for that because hashtags are also quantifiable. You can say, look, I got you 40 hashtags today that are Faber-Castell. That's worth a fortune to their marketers. That's real money to them as opposed to just here's some pictures. So if you're using that technology, that's a great advantage.
Yeah. Okay.
Fabulous, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah Louise. Let's wrap this up. Brainard, I really appreciate you visiting with us and sharing your knowledge and generosity. Let me unmute everybody and we can all Brainard, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.